lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Knock at the Cabin, which was released February 3rd, 2023, exclusively in theaters. But before we get to the review, Rowan, I have a few questions to ask. Would you consider yourself a fan of M. Night Shyamalan? And were you looking forward to Knock at the Cabin?
Unlike, I guess popular opinion, I am not a huge M. Night fan.
Okay.
I think off the top of my head, I think he has like one film I actually enjoy.
Which is?
Which is The Visit. I really like The Visit.
Okay.
I'm not a Sixth Sense guy. I missed the train. I never watched it when I was a kid.
So you already knew the spoiler probably going into it whenever you watched it? Yeah.
I actually only saw The Sixth Sense a year and a half ago, for the first time. And I was just like, man, I guess knowing the twist is kind of, the issue.
It basically ruins the movie. Yeah, that whole movie hinges on the twist pretty much.
Yeah, and I was just like, this movie just fucking sucks. and I saw Old in the midst of the pandemic, the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I think when that came out, it was one of those times the theater was open for a couple weeks and then it shut down afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But, I went. I still watch his movies because, like a sucker, I've got to know what everyone else is watching. And I'm like, maybe he'll do it. Maybe he'll do it for me. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, I'm not a big fan. I'm generally not a fan of movies in general with twists.
Full stop. I'm just not a fan of movies in general.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like you said, it's kind of like Sixth Sense saying. It's just, the issue with a lot of twist films is when there's a twist, I can never watch it again because it's never as good as that first time. There's just no rewatchability. In terms of this, I mean, like I just said, I'm always interested when he has a new film out just because everyone else is. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what's going on. And, it being a horror movie, I'm always going to go support it. So I was mildly curious. And especially, I don't know about you, but a lot of, reviewers that are more important than us would have got to see this in advance. I had heard the mumblings that it was good.
Yeah.
And that he was back. Now, he was never there in my book, so it didn't really matter to me. So, yeah, I was curious about this. What about you? What are your feelings on him, and were you excited for this?
Yeah, similarly, I don't know if I'd call myself an M. Night Shyamalan fan, but I have seen all of his movies since The Sixth Sense, other than, I think, After Earth. He's that sort of filmmaker that, I kind of admire for being ambitious, but I think his reach constantly exceeds his grasp. He's one of those guys that over the years, he's obviously pigeonholed himself into being the twist ending guy, and as you mentioned, it's kind of once you know there's going to be a twist ending, you're just constantly looking for it. And almost his movies got sort of meta where they just have a lot of red herrings and kind of hints towards different twist endings that they don't wind up being. And then on rewatches just seems really sloppy and why are we wasting time to set up a twist ending or something that it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's just kind of a waste. I don't know if I'd call myself a fan. Like I said, in the last 10 years he had The Visit and Split, both of which I enjoyed both of those. But then similarly, he had Glass and Old, which I think were both terrible. So that's the sort of thing where it's whenever an M. Night Shyamalan movie's coming out, I go in a little apprehensive. I say, oh, it could be pretty good. I enjoy The Sixth Sense. I like Signs. I like The Village. And like I said, I like The Visit and Split. So I do like a good few movies in his filmography, but I think he would probably have more misses than hits for me. And Old is honestly one of the worst things I've seen in theaters in the last 5 years. Like, I absolutely hated it. So was I looking forward to Knock at the Cabin? Not really. But similar to yourself, the groundswell of the social media reactions of saying, like, this is the best Shyamalan movie in 20 years got me a little bit more excited. And is it the best Shyamalan movie in 20 years? I guess we'll throw it over to the trailer and we'll find out.
It's coming. The apocalypse. Your family must sacrifice one of the three of you, or the world will end.
This is delusional.
I'm on my family's side.
Make a choice. We're not sacrificing anyone.
Make a choice. Rated R.
What you just heard is from Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan and written by M. Night Shyamalan, Steve Desmond, and Michael Sherman, and the story is as follows. While vacationing at a remote cabin in the woods, a young girl and her parents are taken hostage by 4 armed strangers who demand they make an unthinkable choice to avert the apocalypse. Confused, scared, and with limited access to the outside world, the family must decide what they believe before all is lost. Now, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Knock at the Cabin?
My first major spoiler-free thought that's a positive on this is Dave Bautista continues to just kill it. I was trying to think, like, I don't think there's ever been, like, another, like, fighter / wrestler that has entered acting that has kind of been, like, as interesting as Dave Bautista, just with his kind of want for, like, meatier roles, different kinds of roles, and his overall, like, acting ability. You know, this isn't a case of, like, The Rock, where it's just, I'm gonna play myself in every movie ever, and there's gonna be no change. So, if you're, like, a Bautista fan, like, this is a great showcase of him. It's, like, a very interesting character, I thought, you know, because he's kind of, like, soft-spoken, like, almost timid in this, which is, like, kind of interesting. And, yeah, I was just, like, really, really impressed with him. Like, there's some pretty, like, emotional monologue stuff from him in this. He was fantastic in it. This is
oh no.
Yeah. So this is it. I'm saying in the spoiler free section, this is where it gets difficult for me to dance around. But I will say I think as, like, a kind of single location film, it did have me for quite a bit of it. I thought that everything kind of piqued my interest. I thought that it kept me intrigued enough in the story. Now, I'll say this with, like, a parentheses of, like, wait till the spoiler section. But as I was watching, you know, I was like, they're only giving me enough to be curious and wonder what's going on, what's happening. And I thought the premise was interesting. Now, I will say I've never read the book, Paul Tremblay's book on this.
Yeah, neither have I. I've only read A Head Full of Ghosts by him, I think is what he wrote, that I read.
I will say, like, when I got out of the theater, the first thing I did, because I was like, I'm probably not going to read the book, maybe, I don't know. So I did, like, go, and I was like, I'm going to go look at, like, the actual full plot summary of the book, because I am curious. And, of course, this is a morbid curiosity, because our boy M. Night has, you know, many a times had, you know... Luckily, this is a book that he was allowed to take from, because M. Night's got some plagiarism issues for many of his movies. So I was just interested. I'm like, he actually got to work with a book legally this time, and what was the case? I will say, and I guess this kind of goes into my recommendation.
Go for it.
I don't know if you're a fan of the book, if you're going to be a fan of the movie. Because The movie is very, very different in tone, it seems, and plot of the book. The book, like most of the time, the book is very heavy. It deals like with some very serious themes and emotion. And it was interesting because, I saw this with Exilia, and, poor Exilia barely stayed awake for it. In her defense, it was late. But, I just kept saying when I got out of it, I was like, M. Night continues to me to show that, he is like one of the top, I always say on the episodes, like the top popcorn director. He's just making stuff for consumption that's like pretty easy to digest. And this it's still proof of that, I think. That, like I said, after looking at the book and stuff, I was like, anything mildly offensive or shocking, he removed. And was like, we're not doing that because the general public won't ride with me. I mean, I think they would, but... And I will, say that I will get into it. I'll talk a little bit about the book comparison in the spoiler.
Yeah, it's a little weird because we're not doing, like, the book review, and it feels like for a lot of it, you're kind of critiquing the movie more so by the book when you haven't even read the book. You read Wikipedia, so
when we get into it, you'll see why I say why. I don't necessarily respect the decisions made in this.
Fair enough.
So you know what? I'll wait till the spoiler section and really get in my blurb. I recommend. I mean, sure, I guess, not really. I thought it was all right. I think if you're an M. Night fan, obviously you're going to go see it. I also think if you're an M. Night fan, this is going to kind of be weird. Yeah, I don't know. What are your spoiler-free thoughts? I'm kind of lost at words on this one.
Yeah, overall, I thought this was pretty good. It's a significant step up from Old because, as I mentioned before, that movie's just simply horrendous.
That's not hard.
Yeah. This is a high-concept story, obviously, that you may have been able to discern from the blurb, which obviously relies on the strength of the cast and their performances. And as you mentioned, Dave Bautista is really good. Personally, I thought Jonathan Groff was really good. There's a couple of other people in the cast that I enjoyed as well, but I don't want to get too much into like their performances or their take on the characters they're playing. What I will say is I did like seeing Rupert Grint again because I don't think I've seen him since Harry Potter, and I just kind of don't like it when these child stars fizzle out and have no career and oftentimes, just have a terrible life afterwards. So it was nice to see him in the movie, which is a funny thing to say with a horror movie. Oh, it was so nice, to see this guy.
I didn't know he was from Harry Potter until Exilia pointed out.
That's Ron Weasley, dude.
I've only ever seen one Harry Potter movie, so
of course you have. I'm gonna not even be surprised by that. What I will say is I did find some of the cinematography choices to be a little distracting in this. Maybe we'll get into it in the spoiler discussion, maybe we won't, but it was something that like I was constantly noticing rather than it kind of adding more depth or kind of bringing me into the movie. Similarly, the CGI, even though it's quite sparse and used sparingly throughout the movie, I thought it looked pretty bad as well. It certainly wasn't convincing. And without getting into any spoilers or anything, there is a kind of an overuse of flashbacks to kind of tell aspects of the narrative. And to me, they basically did nothing other than pad out the runtime. I think maybe it was M. Night trying to evoke greater emotion or maybe try to add an extra layer to this story, because overall it does wind up being remarkably simple for what this family has to deal with. But it didn't do much for me. And this is, once again, this is a weird thing for me to, harp on, but similar to our episode on Megan, I did find myself wanting a little bit more grit and a little bit more gore in this thing, just really to emphasize how horrific a situation this family's been put in. This is another movie that's rated R, and outside of maybe one or two scenes of just like frustrated swearing, there's nothing in this to justify the rating. So, once you see what's happening in the cabin, what weapons are kind of laying around, or, kind of the force that's being exhibited by these people, I was definitely expecting a little bit more horror, for this horror podcast. Rowan, how about you go ahead and say if you'd recommend it first? So you already said it. Did you say a light recommendation, right?
Yeah, I said a light recommendation. I will say, to add to that, like, yeah, that was kind of one of the disappointments in this, is like I was like barely grasping on straws to call this a horror movie.
Yeah.
And like you said, like any violence, like you don't see anything, like everything's cut away. There was really no reason other than, like, you know, the 3 curse words for this to be R, which was, yeah, disappointing.
Yeah, it's very bizarre because it's almost like conceptually is what makes it an R-rated movie rather than actually what's on screen, because once again, the concept of the movie is horrific for any family to have to deal with, but what we see, it's cut away like long before you actually see any of the carnage unfold. So yeah, similar to Rowan, even though I had a few issues with it, and it didn't really surprise me much whatsoever, it didn't frustrate me much either. So I was captivated for pretty much the entire runtime. Similar to him, I was along with the characters. I liked a lot of their performances. So I'm going to recommend that our listeners check it out. Not even just for M. Night fans, but, you know, if you like horrors or more so thrillers, you know, kind of single location thrillers, I think this would be a better classification, then I'd give it a recommend. And with that, I'd say we cut to the spoiler discussion so we can get into the nitty gritty on Knock at the Cabin. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Knock at the Cabin, so if you have not seen the movie, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen it, or keep listening if you simply don't care. And Rowan, usually I let you kick off our spoiler discussion, but...
you give it, man. You give it.
Yeah, I have to ask, because this is an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and as we've kind of danced around a little bit, this is a guy known for his twists. Like, what twist did you really find in this movie? Was the twist that there was no twist? Was the twist that they just played it straight and these people were correct?
The twist was not only that he had no twist, was that I just think he had no idea how to, like, land the plane. And it was just, like, so sloppily done, in my opinion. I just felt he kind of wrote himself, and he was like, wow,
into a corner.
Into this corner, and he's like, wow, like, I don't really have much to do. Yeah, like, what were your thoughts on the twist of no twist?
So I did like it, because I'm hoping that maybe this will be a pattern that not every M. Night Shyamalan movie has to have a twist. Maybe, like, finally he can just basically write a straightforward, pretty simple narrative. Because, like I said, this whole movie, its whole conceit is basically a family deciding if they're going to sacrifice one of them, while 4 people who broke into the cabin are almost doing like performative executions to bring about the end of the world, heralding themselves as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which once again is crazy. It's a really big idea. Like it's like you're kind of with the characters the entire time. Like, are these people insane? Is it a weird religious cult? Are they actually the horsemen of the apocalypse? Are they aliens? I don't know. It's M. Night. It could be anything, right? Like, so the fact that it was just played straight, I kind of did like. Was it executed the best? The thing is that this movie to me is very similar to another movie called Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I don't know. Have you seen that one?
I've never seen it. I'm aware of what it is, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, so that one's conceit, once again, is basically it comes down to having to kill a member of your family. And that one is like way darker, way more heady. It's very like thematically rich. It's weird. It's like almost like the artsy version of this movie. And I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. I thought it was great. Whereas this one, I was like, yeah, I almost feel like I like a lot of the characters maybe better in this than that movie. But it was just kind of my enjoyment at the end of it. I was like, I enjoyed it, but it's almost like hollow in a way. There's not a lot there. Like it's once again, with this such a complicated choice, there should be a lot that we should be able to chew on. And I felt like it was just simple.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that was kind of my thing with it, is I felt like every scene where I'm like, oh, they could like really get into something thematically or heavy or like add some weight. And I was like, nah, let's just go like as light as possible, blow through everything, just, you know, make it just as easy to digest as I possibly can. And kind of, you know, you brought it up in the spoiler free section, like, the apocalypse, apparently just not that bad. I don't know. I was like, this apocalypse fucking sucks. They're talking about hundreds of thousands of people die every time you don't make a choice, but they're constantly shown on TV, like, I don't know, like 100 people die, that's it. Like the tsunami takes out a beach of people, that's it. And then like the planes are going down, and me and Exili both looked at each other, and I'm like, even all these planes doesn't equal 100,000 people.
Well, yeah, they say something along the lines like 700 planes, right, that have fallen out of the sky. Yeah.
But I was just like, I don't know. I thought, there's like billions of people on Earth. I thought there's going to be like a little more weight to these decisions than just like, oh, a beach in, wherever the fuck the beach was. It's like this one beach. You're going to have one less beach in the U.S. if you don't make a decision. So if you like to swim,
like I was kind of extrapolating from those news reports that obviously it was just like an English-speaking, American country or whatever, right? Like that maybe there was a little bit more mayhem, but also due to kind of the scale of it, I thought there was going to be a reveal in this movie that they had like a USB stick plugged into the TV or something, which is wild. But there is like a scene near the end of the movie where everyone kind of gets knocked unconscious, and we have a little time skip as they're all tied up and everything. So I was like, okay, they had a time to kind of orchestrate some of this and put their plan into motion, but no, that wasn't it at all. So yeah, I was extrapolating. That wasn't too big of a thing for me, although when you're hearing about a prophecy of the world being set ablaze, it would take a lot of airplanes to set the whole world ablaze. I think probably some bombs or war going off would be a little bit more quicker at doing that.
Your sky also has to look like the CGI work wasn't done by like the Sci-Fi Channel. So
that's true, and that's kind of what I was hinting at as well. Like the planes like falling out of the sky, it's awful. It's really bad. And sometimes they like linger on it and almost feel like it's like a good shot as well. Like once, I guess this is kind of getting to my cinematography critiques. It's like they'll pan across the sky and you'll see like these 747s falling out, one to the left of frame, and they'll move over a bit, and one dead center of frame, they'll move over a little bit more, and now it's in the right of frame. And I'm just like, there was 3 747s like that close at a similar altitude flying that all fell out at the same time. It's just, once again, this is just like being nitpicky, but it is like weird little things that you go like, huh, or kind of like shrug at as you're watching. Similarly, like I thought a lot of it was really on the nose when they were doing, what are the characters' name? Daddy Eric and Daddy Andrew. And I'm saying Daddy Eric and Andrew because it is a same-sex couple in this, and that is what they call each other. They denote each other by their first name. And there's like this heart of the movie where they're supposed to be always on the same page, but the entire runtime of the movie, they're not on the same page. It's very much like Eric, Jonathan Groff's character, is very much, you can tell he's a little bit more religious or spiritual, or like believes that this could actually be the case, where Andrew is just like hell and brimstone, just like angry the entire time. And they do a lot of shots of showing one of them on like the leftmost side of the frame with a bunch of space between them, and then the other one on the rightmost side of the frame. So it's like dragging the characters far apart for our knowledge, like when we're watching the movie as well. Or they'll do shots of one over Dave Bautista's left shoulder and one over Dave Bautista's right shoulder. And once again, maybe not everybody notices this, but it was just incredibly on the nose to me. I was like, okay, I get it. They're on opposite viewpoints. One's a good, one's evil type of, it's just it's that symbology that we've known ever since, cartoon movies and Disney movies and stuff. It's not very deep.
My issue with like the Daddy Eric, Daddy Andrew stuff was, okay, so they kind of, sow those seeds that Daddy Eric, has like a kind of a religious background or is a little more of faith than Daddy Andrew, but like it's never actually explored, even though like we get flashbacks of, like we get flashbacks of Redmond like committing a hate crime on them. We get like their disapproving parents. I think it's Andrew's parents. Like we get all this backstory of stuff that frankly doesn't matter to the story.
Exactly. Like the Redmond reveal winds up doing nothing, so it's just like it adds an extra 5 minutes of the movie that is just like, okay, there's a hate crime that's somehow committed by one of these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and somehow he didn't specifically target these people. It's just the coincidences there are just insane, right?
Yeah. Well, and I just thought, I was like, oh well, like if we're getting flashbacks, like let's explore like how religious is Eric, and like all these things, as well as, to me, like I could kind of tell from the beginning of the movie is I was like, okay, like this is really going to be a story of about, you know, as all whatever I'm about to see, whatever atrocities I'm about to see is how tight is this family unit? Like, is this family unit like in lockstep with each other? How far does their love go? All this stuff. And then, well, you know, it only goes as far as the end of the movie. And then Eric, decides to sacrifice himself.
The one that for basically the entire movie, it seems like he would have been the one to sacrifice himself. So it's not even surprising. And he talks about seeing like a man in the light and stuff, which basically could be like an afterlife or a god figure. And he talks about basically being at peace with where he is, like spiritually and faith and stuff. So it's like, of course he's the one to sacrifice himself. It's not a surprise.
Well, and I thought too, like, because, you know, they do the typical shot of like, we're looking at Andrew's face, you hear the gun go off, he's kind of in shock, so you're like, oh shit, what one got? And I was like, oh, like maybe we'll do a flip here and it'll actually be, even though the whole audience knows that Eric is the one that's gonna get it, maybe they'll be like, no, guess what? Actually, Andrew...
Yeah, he's toast. Yeah.
...made him hold the gun and whatever. And then I was like, no, we're just going the real basic way. So this is where, like I said, I'd bring it up in this. So this is where I was kind of interested when I got out. I was like, all right, like, let me, like, check the book out and stuff. Where the book is a love story. And the book is about how tight is this family unit. And this is where I was like, you knew M. Night wasn't going to touch this stuff. Because, you know, and this is spoilers, so if you haven't read the book, there you go. Go pause it now or skip it.
I like that Rowan's just spoiling the book against my will, but all right, I'll go along with it.
Well, but this is where, this is my point where I'm just like, the things he could have done if you just had it stuck to the fucking book is the kid dies. What happens is the kid accidentally gets shot, and then Eric's faith is tested because it doesn't stop the apocalypse. And Eric's like, well, you know, if my kid's death isn't enough for a sacrifice to God, then fuck the world. We're gonna be a couple in the apocalypse.
Okay.
That's like how the story ends, is them as a couple walking off in the apocalypse.
Okay, so it is still like apocalyptic. It's not like a crazy cult or anything. It is actually the end of the world.
It's actually
still?
The end of the world still. So, I mean, he did keep that. But to me, this is where I was saying, like, to me, the religious stuff could have worked if that had been kept. Because to me, I'm like, okay, like, we're talking about your faith being shaken and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where, like I said, M. Night basically was like, nah, let's make this just like super boring and palatable and just, you know, Lord forbid that we kill a damn kid in the movie theater.
Yeah, I still didn't find it boring, but I do agree that would have made for a more interesting movie, especially since the whole thesis of the movie winds up being about faith, right? Like, do you believe what these people are saying? Do you believe that the signs are aligning for it to be the end of times? Do you believe in the end of times? You know, that sort of thing, right?
How
so the
far will you go for your faith?
Yes, exactly, which winds up being an interesting thesis for the movie. And one of the things that they kind of flirt with, but they never go with, is that the horsemen are kind of boring because they're very stoic and they're almost like unshakable. Like, they don't actually have a crisis of faith. None of the horsemen do. They're just like very much like, nope, this is my time to go. This is my execution, you know. And Rupert Grint was the only one who was a little bit off, you know. Redmond, he was like a little bit more testy and a little bit more anger and excitative and like kind of squirrely for the most part, and I liked him a lot, but he's the first one that's gone. So it's kind of like he's executed within the first probably 20 minutes of the movie, and then we're with three people that are more or less stoic. Don't get me wrong, they question things a little bit, but it's never enough to actually like really be the meat of the narrative. And that's kind of the same thing with the family unit. I would have liked them to have a little bit more like one of them firmly believes that this is the end, and one of them firmly believes that these people are crazy, and a little bit more conflict between it all. It's just, I think this whole thing could have been taken up a big notch if there was just more conflict and a little bit more complexity, and not even, like, not a lot, but just a little bit more intertalking between the people. Maybe one of them doesn't actually want to be executed, but they execute them against their will. Like one of the horsemen, for example. Like there's details here that could have made it feel more rich and less hollow, I think.
Yeah, and I liked some of the stuff. Like I liked, some of the scenes where their kid, escapes through the basement and like,
yeah, that's fun.
And then, Leonard is like trying to catch her, and he obviously eventually does catch her. But I was also like, there wasn't even any of that. I'm like, this family really makes zero attempts, like other than to like attack them twice, which just they suck at. But I'm like, no one tries to just like escape through a window or like do any sort of normal thing that you would think in any of these movies, especially like kind of like an intruder into your home movie, or in this case,
other than
Airbnb.
obviously overlooking Andrew going out and getting the gun, of course, which is a big.
Wow,
he does go get the gun, but that's like basically the third act of the movie, right? So yeah,
I just like, to me, I was like, we could have played with that a little bit more, made it almost like added a little bit of more like cat and mouse in there.
Yeah,
just anything to kind of like shake it up. Because like I said, I think if it had been shaken up more, then the no twist, I probably would have been like, all right, whatever. Like, at least I kind of got this cool little, like, intruder home invasion type thing, rather than I was just like, all right, like, I felt like it was kind of like empty calories.
Yeah, even more discussing it is like, we never really got to see what happens if one of the horsemen get killed out of order. We never got to see what happens if they missed their time that they were supposed to die at. We never saw any of that, right? So it would have been interesting to at least answer those questions and have the people that believe themselves to be the four horsemen at least, have a little bit more shaken faith and whatnot. It would have been a little bit more interesting for sure. But yeah, I don't know if there's too much more to get into with this. Do you want to go and just score it, or?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable to score it. I mean, like we said, I think if anything, and if you're one of those like nutso people that just listen to this whole thing and still hasn't gone and seen it, and you're gonna go see it. Like, I mean, like I said, I think there's not really a lot to spoil. You're kind of getting what you're getting, and you'll feel how you feel about it, I guess.
Yeah, basically, what you see in the trailer is what you're getting. There's no twists, no turns. That's what you're getting, and that's it. So, if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So, Rowan, what would you give Knock at the Cabin?
So I'm giving it an A. I was not
a nay.
I'm giving it an A.
Oh my god.
I said when we got out of the theater,
you recommended it and said it was all right in the non-spoiler section.
I said if you're gonna go see it, you're probably gonna go see it. If you're an M. Night fan, I mean, I'm not an M. Night fan. For my personal taste, it's an A. When I got out of the theater, all I said is, boy, I wish I had just went and saw Infinity Pool again. Or literally anything. I could watch Tar in the theater right now. It wasn't for me, dog. I wasn't feeling it. Like I said, I was intrigued for a bit. And then when I was just like, oh, it really is like, I'm just watching an hour and 40 minutes version of the trailer. I could have just watched the trailer and have seen the movie, essentially. It just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. It's going in my M. Night flop pile yet again. Like, this isn't one I'm probably gonna ever want to revisit. Yeah, no, I'm good. It's an A. I'll stick to the visit.
Wow.
Maybe I did say that if anything, it's made me want to rewatch Signs again. So, just because I haven't seen that movie since the theater. I guess thanks for making me go see what Mel Gibson was up to back those days again. What about you, Colton? I feel like you might be a little stronger on it than me for the first time ever.
Yeah, I think a nay is kind of crazy for this because so much of it is at least competent. That's the thing. And the movie did have me kind of wrapped around its finger for a lot of it. Like, I was interested. Like, as we talk about it, it's not an interesting movie to talk about. It's very boring. There's not much to discuss. But watching this simple little home invasion thriller essentially play out, I enjoyed it. I'll give it a very soft yay. It's I think it's good. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. It's certainly not amazing. but I think it's good. It's much better than Old. It's much better than Glass, which are both hard nays. And I don't know, I probably like Split and The Visit more than this. But I mean, it's certainly not his best movie in the last 20 years. That's certainly hyperbolic, but I enjoyed it. I think the performances are good. I think, it had me, I guess. It had me. So yeah, if you made it this far in the podcast, be sure to follow us on our socials at It Slays Podcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Slasher. Basically, if it's a social media, we're there at It Slays Podcast. And if you're listening to this on our release weekend, there's still a few days left in our 4th anniversary poll. So make sure to head on over to our Instagram or Twitter at It Slays Podcast to vote for which movie we're going to be covering for our anniversary episode. I think I probably know which 2 movies are going to be duking out in the finals, but I'll leave that up for the people to find out themselves. So yeah, please go and vote in the poll. And Rowan, tell the people about the playlist.
Yeah, so if you like music from horror movies, go check out the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of our social media and go to the link tree, and there's a link directly to go into it. Yeah, and we put up music from movies we review, or iconic movies, or just horror movies we like, and we update it pretty regularly. So go check it out and get your spooky music on.
And next time on the show, we're going to be covering Skinamarink. It's finally time. I feel like I've been mentioning Skinamarink in the next time on the show section for 3 months. It was out in the first round of our listener poll, but we're covering it anyways on Now Slaying. So it's available now on Shudder. So if you want to listen to everything, make sure to give it a watch. And we'll have our episode on Skinamarink in the podcast feed early next week, I think. And with that, I think that about wraps things up this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.